Okay, so obviously we're not using calculators again for obvious reasons. It'd be very easy to get everything right if you know how to use a calculator. So this chapter is dealing with rational numbers, and rational numbers are things like fractions and decimals. A rational number, basically the definition is any number that can be written as a fraction. Okay? Think ratio is a fraction, rational ratio. So today we're just going to do section 1 of chapter 4, which is terminating and repeating decimals. Raise your hand if you know what terminating decimals look like.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, like the Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? The Terminator. But what does that mean, Josh? What does terminating mean?
Killing?
Not killing. What do you think, Michael?
Getting rid of.
Getting rid of? What else? If you terminate something, what happens to it? What?
Destroy it.
Devin?
It goes away.
Goes away. Okay, so all of these words are good. It means that it ends. So this is a decimal that ends. It doesn't keep going. What do repeating decimals look like? Raise your hand. McKenna?
It's a decimal, like, it just keeps repeating, so it goes like 0.222.
0.222. And do you know how we write it?
Pi.
A line over it. Good. Pi is not terminating and not repeating. Yeah. So it's irrational. Okay? So repeating. The decimal form, repeating decimal, the decimal form of a fraction. Okay? Here's a couple examples of how we write notation. Okay? So repeating decimals are the decimal form of a fraction. So example, if you have 0.3333, you only have to put the bar. It's called bar notation. You'll put the bar over the 3. If you have 0.1212, you just put it over the 12. You could have other things where only part of it repeats, so then you just put the bar over the part that repeats. Okay? So if it's just part of it repeating, that's the part you put the bar over. Yeah. Yeah. Only the 8-5 repeats. Okay? Okay, any questions on that and how it's repeating? Easy? Okay? Terminating decimals, the repeating digit is 0. That just means it stops, right? Because if you just keep going 0, 0, 0, it's over. It ends. So 0.25 with a 0, and that would be repeating, it's just 0.25. Okay? We don't normally have this bar notation over a 0. I just show you that because I want you to know the zeros they just keep going. Okay? But you don't have to write it that way. Okay. So, to write fractions as decimals, that's the first thing that we're going to look at today. So let's say we have 7/10. So this is what it looks like in words. You've seen this before. This is the fraction, and this is the decimal. Some of you already know it's 0.7 because you've done these. Others of you are like, how did you do that? You just take 10 and you divide that into 7. But remember, you have to put 7.00 and you'll end up with 0.7. Do you remember this from elementary school? Yeah. This is, you started this back in like 3rd grade and you just kept going. Each year you did a little bit more.
No.
Okay, another example would be 19 hundredths. Hundredths with the D in it. So you put 19 over 100 and then as a decimal it's 0.19. So when you're decimals, you look at, okay, this is the tens, right? This is the tenths place. This is 100. This is the hundredths place. Do you remember that when you had to find place value? There's like a big chart on the wall normally in elementary school, and it had tenths, hundredths, thousandths with the D's, and then it went the other way too. ones, tens, hundreds. I know you've seen these over and over, right? They're colorful. Okay. If we have 105 thousandths, then we would write this out to the thousandths place. So you could simplify it as well. And if you simplified it, what would this be? It's 21 over 100. 0.21, right? Or you could write it just how it is as 0.105. So 2 ways to write that, and I would take both answers. If you simplified and then wrote it, or you just did the original. Okay. Any questions on that stuff? This stuff should be review. Okay. So if we want to write a fraction as a decimal, do you remember how to do that? Like if it's not tens, hundreds, thousandths, do you remember how to do it? You do? Okay. So if you had 74 over 100, that's easy. That's 0.74. 7 over 20. How did I go from 7 over 20 to 35 over 100? How did I do that? And why did I do that? That's the one I want you to think about after you write this down. Raise your hand when you know why I did this and how I did this. Anastasia?
You multiply by 5 so you can get 100 so you have a whole.
Yeah. So if I multiply by 5 to get to 100, then it's a lot easier. I don't have to do all the work and write it out. I just multiply and get my 100, and then I know it's 0.35. So if I multiply the bottom by 100, I multiply the top, multiply the bottom by 5 to get to 100. I have to multiply the top by 5, and that gives me 35. Do you remember doing this in elementary?
Yeah.
You did this in 6th grade when you were setting up proportions too. Okay, and then what happens if you get a mixed fraction? Yeah, Zach. Like 5 3/4. What did I do here? I separated them, right?
Yeah.
So I have 5 as my whole number. 3/4 is the same as 0.75. Do you know that? 3/4, 3/4. So then I can just write it as 5.75. Little shortcuts. Okay? So A is pretty self-explanatory. B, you multiply by 5 to get to the 100. And C, if you get a mixed fraction, you separate them out. Easy enough?
Yeah.
We'll do practice with these, so don't worry if you don't see it yet. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this because this is elementary school standards, but we do need to review it. Okay, next page. Okay, so I want you guys to try 3/10. Write 3/10 and tell me the decimal. Raise your hand when you have it. Okay, Ethan, what is it? 0.3. Good. 0.3, easy one, right? Okay, let's try this one. 3 over 25. Raise your hand when you have it. Logan.
112.
How'd you get it?
25 is 1/4 of.
Yeah. Times 4 times 4, right? Yeah, good. To get to 100.
I was about to put first
Ah, and then you saw the 25. So you knew, oh, I have to multiply times 4 to get to 100, right? Good job. How about this one? Raise your hand when you have this one. Alex P., what'd you get?
6.50.
Close. You're close. There's something a little bit off right there. Nina, help him out. Good. -6, and you don't have to put 50. You could just put 5, right? Because the 0 drops off. Because there's a negative right there. Oh, it's hard to see.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay? All right. So now what we're going to do is we wrote, these ones were pretty simple. We're going to write these, write each fraction as a decimal. Okay? So So this is the way when you don't have tenths and hundreds. So do you remember this? This long division stuff? So if we have 3/8, and I notice I can't really multiply anything to make 100, right? So in this case, I'm going to take the 8 and divide it into the 3. Okay? Do you remember this? And you have to put a decimal, and then you bring up the decimal. So 8 goes into 30 3 times. 3 times 8 is 24. Do you remember long division? Yeah, my son hates this. Yeah.
It's kind of fun.
It's fun if you're good at it, but if you have to do 100, it's not so fun, is it? But either way, this is how we do this. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Okay. So each time you're bringing down the 0, right? In elementary, they made you write like all these little lines and put X's. And, yeah. Okay? All right. Now, let's look at the next one. So if I have negative 1/40th, I can keep it as positives when I'm dividing it and just put the negative at the end, okay? So this is, if it goes into 1, you have to put the decimal. It doesn't go into 10, so it has to go into 100. It goes into 100 twice, which is 80. 100 minus 80 is 20. Bring down the 0. 40 goes into 200 5 times. So this is a negative because it started with a negative. 0.025. Any questions on these two?
No.
You're okay? Okay, let's look at the next one. 7/9. So again, 9 into 7. Put the decimal. It goes into 76 times, right? That's 63. Subtract. It goes into 70 again. Do you see how you just keep getting 7? So my answer is just going to be 0.7 repeating. Does anybody know about like the patterns with decimals? There's patterns with fractions and decimals. Has anyone ever done like, maybe your teacher had you do a worksheet where you had to figure out, they gave you all these fractions and you had to write the decimals, and there's patterns? There's obviously patterns with 10s and 5s, and there's patterns with 9s. Does anyone know what the patterns with 9s are?
Yeah.
What is it? When there's a 9 in the denominator, what will all of my decimals be? Yeah. So if you have a 9 in the denominator, you're always going to get a repeating decimal, no matter what number you put on top. Cool, right? Yeah.
So 0?
So 9s always will have repeating decimals. 5/9? Yeah.
What would 0 be?
0.
Wouldn't that be a terminating fraction?
That would be, but 0 over anything is 0. Okay? All right, so I want you guys to try -7/8. -7/8. Raise your hand when you have it. Okay, Maddie, what'd you got?
0.875.
What goes in front of the 0.875? Good. The negative. Don't forget that. 0.875. Raise your hand if you got that right.
There's no negative.
The negative's right here. Aha. Good job, you guys. Okay, let's try this one. Negative 3 over 11. Eleven has a similar property as nines. Hint, hint. Raise your hand when you think you have it. Alex C., what'd you get?
0.3 repeating.
Not 0.3 repeating. It's over 11, so be careful. Kendall? And what is it, though, in front of it?
A negative.
Good. Negative 0.27. The whole thing's repeating, right?
Yes.
Raise your hand if you got that right. Way to go. All right, let's try this one. 2 and 1/8. 2 and 1/8. You didn't get that one? I'll write it out for you over here, okay? I'll write it out for you. See that?
But why would the answer just be 0.27? Can't you just stop at 0.7?
You have to have both 27 and 27. Okay, raise your hand when you have it.
What was the other 27?
Manuel, what'd you get?
2.125.
Okay, so 2.125. Good. So 8s have a special property as well. You generally will get a 5 at the end of whenever you divide by 8. Okay, so let's look at, do you have a question or just stretching?
Yeah, I got a question.
Okay,
I got 0.375.
for this one,
Yeah.
all you have to do is leave the 2 and then divide 1 by 8. So 8 goes into 1, right? 0.00.
Oh, I added
Yeah,
2.
so 1 and then keep going, right? Okay, let's try this one, D. 8 and 1/3. Now 1/3 has a special property as well. Some of you already know what 1/3 looks like. It does the same thing as 9s and 11s and 99s and raise your hand when you have it. Taylor, you got it?
8.3.
8.3, and then what's above the 3? Yeah, because you guys know that 1/3 is 0.3333, right? Good job. So some of these you know. Some of them you have to actually do the long division and figure out. But you'll start to see the patterns the more you do. All right, so what you're going to do in your book is on page 267, you're going to do 1 through 12. Still no calculators. Okay? And when you finish that, we will go over it, but if you're way ahead, you can go ahead and start the homework, which is pretty easy. Pretty easy homework. I'll write those on the board for you. Go ahead and start. If you